Some people enter your life and leave like a fleeting breeze. They touch something deep within you, something unnameable, yet making you feel whole and then shattered. And when they depart, you don't just lose a person, you lose a part of yourself. Carl Jung did not explain this phenomenon as a romantic love story, but as a ritual of inner awakening, where the darkness and light within you confront each other through the image of the other. According to him, often we don't love someone for who they are, but because our unconscious has chosen them to activate something within ourselves. Those we call fated are sometimes merely mirrors reflecting old wounds. So how do you know if you're loving a real person or drowning in an inner illusion? How do you distinguish true love from the enchanting projection of the unconscious? In this video, we won't talk about fairy tale love. We'll dive deeper into the realm where archetypes operate, where anima and animus speak, where synchronicity guides, and where love is not salvation, but awakening. If there's someone you can't forget, if you're still unsure, whether it's love, karma, or merely your darkness seeking refuge, stay until the end. Because what you may need is not an answer, but a dialogue with your soul. Number 1, projection in love. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But what few realize is that this reaction sometimes comes not from the other person, but from something lying dormant deep within our unconscious. Projection is one of the most profound and dangerous psychological mechanisms Jung ever decoded. It's when we attribute to others emotions, expectations, and images that originate from the unrecognized parts of ourselves. In love, this mechanism becomes so intense that we can no longer distinguish where the other person ends and where the image in our mind begins. You meet someone, a glance, a word, a gesture, and something resonates in your heart. I've known this person before. I don't know why, but I feel an overwhelming pull toward them. Emotions surge. Your heart opens wide and reason is set aside. But if you're honest, do you truly know them? Or do you only know an image your mind wants to believe in? Jung explained that each of us carries incomplete fragments, suppressed parts of the self, denied aspects, unfulfilled desires. When you haven't recognized or reconciled with these parts, you unconsciously seek someone who embodies them. And when you find them, you think you're in love. But in reality, you're seeing yourself reflected through them. Imagine your soul as a curtained room. The parts you haven't accepted, wounds, desires, fears, passions are locked inside. Then one day someone walks in. They inadvertently lift the curtain. Light pours in. The images and emotions you've long buried suddenly awaken. But instead of realizing the curtain belongs to you, you believe this person is the miracle that illuminated your life. That is the mistake called projection. The truth is, many fated relationships aren't based on a deep understanding of the other, but on an idealized image you've draped over them. They become the savior, the missing piece, the twin soul, all the things you haven't been able to give yourself. And when they fail to live up to that image, you feel disappointed, angry, or broken. But the fault isn't theirs. They simply couldn't live up to the idealized image you imposed on them. Jung believed that loving through projection is asking someone else to bear the responsibility of healing us. And that is the greatest injustice you can unconsciously impose on another. No one comes into your life to be your father, mother, healer, or ideal archetype. Yet in the blindness of your unmet needs and unintegrated wounds, you turn them into all those things. Think back to a relationship in your past that broke your heart to its core. What did that person truly do to cause that pain? Or were you the one who placed too many expectations on their shadow? Were you loving a real person with their light and darkness? or an illusion in human form. If you can share those memories with us in the comments below, because sometimes speaking out is a way to release your heart and bring awakening to others. Jung didn't view projection as wrong. He saw it as an inevitable stage in the soul's development. But if you remain there, you'll repeat relationships like an addiction, full of passion, full of pain, full of regret. Only when you're brave enough to withdraw what you've projected to see the other as they truly are, no more, no less, will you know whether you're loving or merely fleeing from yourself. And that is the moment of awakening. Projection doesn't announce itself with a clear sign. It's subtle, insidious, and often hides in what you believe to be the most sacred. Love at first sight, an uncanny sense of familiarity, an inexplicable obsession with someone nearly a stranger. But if you don't awaken in time, you'll love an image woven by the forgotten parts of your soul, not the real person standing before you. One of the clearest signs of projection is the feeling of knowing them from a past life. You meet someone and feel an instant bond, as if an invisible thread ties you to them. But Jung warned, such intense, sudden connections are often a sign of the unconscious activating a deep archetype within you. It might be the shadow of a distant mother, an absent father, or the ideal person you've always believed would come to heal you. Ask yourself, am I seeing them as a real person or as a dream brought to life? If you can't bear their flaws, if a single mistake devastates you, you're likely loving an ideal you've imposed on them, not them. And that ideal, of course, is impossible. No one can live under the weight of an illusion. Another sign of projection is obsession and excessive emotional dependency. You find yourself constantly checking your phone, anxious when they don't reply, lost without them by your side. But what you don't realize is that you're not truly afraid of losing them. You're afraid of losing the part of yourself you've placed in them. When you hand over your soul for someone else to hold, you can't help but fear. And you call that love. But love doesn't make you tremble from lack. It makes you steady because it's there. Projection also reveals itself in how you react. When they no longer fit the role you expect. When they become distant cold, or simply not as perfect as you imagined. You feel disappointed, disillusioned. But what's truly collapsing isn't love. It's the image you woo in your unconscious. The final and most profound sign is that the relationship doesn't help you grow, but traps you in old emotions. Abandonment, fear of not being loved, the need for validation. If you always feel small, anxious, needing to prove your worth, you're likely loving a part of your wound, not the person. A true relationship lifts you, not shrinks you to fit someone else's emotions. Jung didn't call projection a sin. He said it's the first step of love, but not love in its entirety. Recognizing you're projecting doesn't mean your feelings are false. It only means you're being called to look deeper, to love more consciously, to break free from old patterns with new faces. So if you're in love and feel pulled in like a whirlpool, if you feel I can't live without them, if you're hurting because they're no longer like they were at the start, don't rush to call it fate. Ask, am I loving this person or the part of myself I've never dared to face? When you're awake enough to answer this question and realize you're not loving the person, but an image created by your wounded soul, that's the pivotal moment. A new question arises, no longer emotional, but awakening. So what is true love if it's not projection? To answer that, you can no longer look outward. You must turn inward to what Jung called the process of individuation. And it's here that the concept of true love is understood in its essence. Not a perfect union of two incomplete halves, but a meeting of two souls, awakening, returning to themselves in wholeness. Number 2, the concept of true love in the light of individuation. Carl Jung did not define love as a passionate emotion or a fated connection between two wandering souls in the universe. For him, true love is not the merging of two people into one, as we often call the other half, but the meeting of two beings on a journey to become their fullest selves. And that journey is called individuation. Individuation is the return to the center of your inner self, where you no longer live according to the images imposed by society, family, or your past. It is the process of accepting both the light and the darkness within you, integrating the fragmented parts of your psyche to become a whole person. Only when you are on this journey can love be true. Everything before that, no matter how intense, is likely to be projection, dependency, or the repetition of unhealed wounds. Someone who has not begun the process of individuation loves to be filled, to be saved, to have their worth validated. They love like a child seeking a mother, like a soul missing its half. But love does not come to make you less lonely. It comes to teach you to be alone, without breaking, to be with yourself, without needing someone to prove you're worthy. A person who is not yet mature in their soul will seek in others the parts of themselves they've never allowed themselves to claim. In contrast, someone undergoing individuation loves not to possess, but to coexist. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And there is no true love if you are still living as a false version of yourself, a mask, a borrowed persona, to be loved, to be accepted. When you love from a place that is not truly you, the person who loves you cannot love the real you either. Only when you shed those layers of defense, confront your fears, darkness, and wounds within, can you create a space for love that requires no games, no manipulation, no roles. True love in the light of individuation does not come to make you feel comfortable. It comes to make you grow. Sometimes it is a lullaby, sometimes a slap. Sometimes it makes you feel safe. Sometimes it pushes you into the abyss to teach you how to climb out on your own. Because when true love enters, it doesn't ask, "Are you ready to stay forever?" It asks, "Are you ready to become the person you were born to be?" Imagine individuation as a journey up an inner mountain. Along the way, you must leave behind old baggage, pretense, excessive expectations, the fear of abandonment, and even the notion of the right person, wrong time. When another person is also on that journey, you don't need them to be your crutch. You don't need them to heal you. You only need them to walk alongside you with honesty, clarity, and freedom. Two independent whole beings meet not to merge, but to resonate. And in that connection, love does not make you disappear. It makes you more visible. You don't need to hide your sensitivity or suppress your inner contradictions. You can show up with all that you are. Messy, contradictory, incomplete, but authentic. Because true love doesn't demand perfection. It only asks that you are on the path to becoming your true self. Many believe true love is always smooth, gentle, and without conflict. But Jung argued that it is the conflicts in love that catalyze the ego's growth. In a genuine relationship, each clash is not a collapse, but a doorway to see what remains unintegrated within you. And if the other person is conscious enough not to retaliate or flee, but to look deeply into it with you, that is love doing its true work, transforming you into yourself. Jung asserted that there is no individuation without love, because love at its core is an inner process, where the other serves as a mirror, a symbol, a challenge. Love is not a reward, but a tool for spiritual evolution. And so true love is not a prolonged feeling of comfort. It is an ongoing dialogue with truth. Sometimes hard to hear, but impossible to ignore if you truly want to grow. How do you know you're in an individuating relationship? Ask yourself, am I more honest? more courageous, freer when I'm with this person. If you dare to show up with your vulnerability and authenticity, and they still see you as worthy, not because you're perfect, but because you're striving to be real, then you're not just loving. You're entering a form of love that is awakening. True love doesn't make you addicted to it. It doesn't manipulate you with silence. Doesn't teach you to read the other person's mind. Doesn't make you feel you must try harder to be loved. To step into true love, you cannot merely observe your emotions. You must observe the structure of your soul. What within you is being stirred. Who in your inner world is speaking, and whether you're loving from a place of freedom or being led by an unconscious archetype yet to be named. It is at this point that Jung introduces the core concepts that help us see the true face of love, beginning with the archetypes of anima and animus. Number 3, core concepts for distinguishing love from projection. Carl Jung once said, "Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman, not the image of this or that particular woman, but a definite feminine image. And conversely, within every woman exists an equally mysterious inner masculine image." He called these anima and animus, the internal gender archetypes, vibrant, profoundly influential, and often unconsciously guiding how we love. The anima is the symbol of the feminine within a man's soul, representing emotions, intuition, sensitivity, and the capacity to connect with the inner world. The animus is the masculine archetype within a woman's soul expressed through reason, will action, and the ability to analyze and argue. These seemingly opposing entities not only reside within us, they shape the kind of people we are drawn to, how we love, and even how we hurt. In contemporary psychology, Jung's concept of anima animus projection can be viewed through the lens of attachment theory and family systems theory. Practically speaking, we could say that when we haven't integrated our inner gender archetype, we often choose partners based on an emotional pattern pre-programmed by our nervous system from childhood. For example, a man who hasn't integrated his anima might become enamored with a gentle, mysterious, profound woman, not because of who she is, but because she awakens the feminine part he has suppressed, forgotten, or feared. A woman who hasn't connected with her animus might be drawn to a strong, decisive, rational man, not necessarily out of love, but because she's seeking the strength and rationality she hasn't yet claimed for herself. From this psychological perspective, the person you choose to love often embodies emotional traits that contrast or compensate for the missing role in your family of origin. For instance, if you grew up in a family with a cold, emotionally distant mother, you might seek a woman who is expressive, nurturing, and understands everything without words. But ironically, once you've won her, the projection fades, and you feel disappointed, detached, or out of love. Not because love has ended, but because her symbolic role has been fulfilled. As you read this, a face, a relationship, or a memory might have suddenly surfaced within you. Don't brush it aside. Share it with us, as it might be the first clue to seeing what your heart has kept hidden. This is the tragedy of relationships that feel fated, but end in bitterness. Not because the love was false, but because the person loved was never seen as the real human being they are. Imagine your soul as a house with two wings, one masculine, one feminine, and you've only lived in one half. Then one day, someone knocks on the door on the other side. They don't come to stay forever. They come to suggest it's time to step into the other half of that house, to integrate the forgotten part, so you no longer seek it outside yourself. Thus, true love isn't about finding someone who has everything I lack. It's about meeting someone who gives you the courage to face what you've never dared to claim within yourself. And as you gradually integrate your anima or animus, you no longer love out of lack or become enchanted by mesmerization. You begin to love from a place of wholeness, freedom, and clarity. However, inner light cannot be found solely through the idealized archetypes we project outward. Because alongside the inner lover, there's another figure always present in the shadows of the soul, the part we fear, avoid, or outright deny. And often, it's this part that silently controls how we love. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." We cannot become whole by embracing only the light. We must dare to step into the dark regions within ourselves, where the parts we reject, deny, or haven't dared to name reside. He called this the shadow. The shadow isn't evil. It's simply the unacknowledged part of you. It lives in behaviors you can't explain, in irrational jealousy, in disproportionate hurt, from a rejection or the fear of abandonment, even when the other hasn't left. It's not outside you, it's you in an unrecognized form. And ironically, in love, it's often the shadow that chooses your partner for you. You think you love someone because they're kind, profound, or captivating perhaps. But notice if that relationship makes you jealous, anxious, controlling, or even emotionally volatile. You may not just be loving them. You're touching the unintegrated shadow within yourself. Something in their behavior unconsciously stirs old memories, feelings you thought you'd forgotten, being unheard, unvalued, ignored, or manipulated. They didn't create that pain. They just pressed the trigger. From Jung's perspective, those who drive you crazy, make you lose control, or turn you into the worst version of yourself aren't enemies. They are mirrors of the shadow you carry. They don't come to hurt you, but to activate the part you haven't faced. Like a cluttered basement room, the shadow waits for its door to be opened. Yet we often love wrongly hurt deeply and blame the other instead of asking, what part of me chose this person and why? In modern psychology, Jung's concept of the shadow can be likened to the defense mechanism of repression. Parts of your personality or emotions deemed negative in childhood pushed down into the depths of the unconscious. Those parts don't disappear. They're relegated to a psychological shadow zone that both Freud and Jung recognized as powerfully influencing behavior. Thus, the shadow from a psychological perspective isn't a poetic symbol. It's a region of suppressed data cut off from your emotional map, operating silently and profoundly, shaping who you love, who you hate, and who you hurt for. And sometimes it's those rejected shadow fragments that send out invisible signals, leading you to encounters that seem random but are deeply symbolic. When your inner world stirs with an unnamed longing or an untouched wound, the universe seems to listen and respond. One of our channel's followers left a comment that made our entire team pause and reread it multiple times. She wrote, "I was at my lowest point. I'd just left a deeply hurtful relationship, and everything around me felt like it was collapsing. I didn't want anyone's advice, didn't want anyone's encouragement. Then one night, while aimlessly scrolling YouTube, your video popped up. Within the first few minutes, I burst into tears. Not out of sadness, but because someone had named the pain I hadn't yet put into words. It felt like that video wasn't just randomly there. It was exactly what I needed at that moment, as if someone somewhere heard the silent crack in my soul." That story isn't just a touching moment. It's a vivid example of what Carl Jung called synchronicity, a mystical alignment. He described it as a meaningful coincidence between the inner world and external events, unexplainable by ordinary cause and effect. Thus, synchronicity isn't merely a matter of fate. From a deeper perspective, it's a resonance between the frequency of your unconscious and the rhythm of the universe. When you reach a certain threshold in your inner journey, whether it's accumulated pain or a quiet awakening, You emit a signal, and the universe, like a vast field of resonance, responds by sending people situations or challenges that match that energy. In other words, the person you meet doesn't come to you. They echo from you. They are the reverberation of what you're longing for or avoiding. If you're on a journey to reclaim your self-worth, you might meet someone who makes you question everything you thought you'd built. If you're ready to open your heart, you might meet someone who feels like coming home. But don't be mistaken. Synchronicity doesn't arrive to indulge you. It arrives to awaken you. Imagine yourself as a silent string. When someone comes near with the right energy, aligning with the right pain lesson or symbol, you need the string within you vibrates. You call it love. But at a deeper level, it's the resonance between an awakening self and a living symbol sent to spark the process of individuation. Modern psychology also acknowledges that random yet meaningful events can create emotional turning points because they strike at the moment you're opening up. Like an inner door long locked, the timely arrival of a person can break its hinges. But the catch is that door doesn't open because they knocked so well, but because you were ready to hear the knock. However, there's an uncomfortable truth. You can't fake readiness to trick the universe. Synchronicity doesn't happen because you wish for it. Imagine it, or plaster your walls with positive affirmations. The universe doesn't respond to the desires of the surface ego. It only responds when real change begins in the unconscious. If you are still avoiding your fears, repressing your shadow, or wearing masks in relationships, no matter how much you crave a fated encounter, what you meet will only be a faithful reflection of where you stand in your current journey. Nothing more, nothing less. And here's the most crucial truth. Jung left us about synchronicity. Not every timely arrival is meant to stay. Some people come only to open the door, then leave, so you can learn to accept and see what's within yourself. Number 4, practical questions for recognition. So how do you know if you're loving a person or merely loving a fragmented part of yourself? How do you distinguish between a genuine connection and the enchantment of the unconscious? There's no single formula, but there are questions honest enough, deep enough, and uncomfortable enough to help you begin untangling the threads of emotion you're holding. Below are psychological practice questions. If you dare to face them honestly, they can reveal the boundary between awakened love and blind projection. Now, if you're ready, comment, "I'm ready," so we can begin together. Question 1. What is it about this person that draws me in so intensely that I can't explain it? Answer by looking deeply, not with surface reasons, like they're kind, they're smart, or we're compatible, but by examining the true feeling. Do they make you feel safe, like you're home, like you're finally chosen, like you're fully seen? This feeling can be profoundly sacred, but also deeply dangerous, because you may not love them. You may love the sensation of healing they've unknowingly triggered in you. Question 2. Do I feel like I'm shrinking in this relationship? True love helps you grow. Projection makes you shrink. If you constantly feel you must be gentler, less demanding, more compliant, more mature, just to keep them, you may be living in the fear of abandonment rather than a true connection. Ask yourself, am I loving from freedom or fear if being yourself makes you fear losing everything that's not love? It's your nervous system reacting to an unhealed threat. Question 3. Am I expecting this person to understand me without words? The silent expectation that someone must understand me, feel me, is a strong sign of projection. You're hoping they'll play the role of an inner archetype, but the person you love is an independent individual, not the embodiment of what you've lacked. When you feel disappointed because they don't automatically know you're hurt, or intuitively understand what you need, pause and ask, am I waiting for them or for an old shadow that once abandoned me? Question 4, am I idealizing this person excessively? If you think they're unlike anyone before, something truly special, or like they stepped out of a dream, beware of those thoughts. Most unconscious projections come with a sense of sanctifying the other. They're not just a person, they're a symbol. And when you place someone on a pedestal in your mind, they have no room to be their real self. When they err, you feel shattered. When they're imperfect, you feel betrayed. But they haven't betrayed you. They've simply stepped out of the role you assigned them. Question 5. Am I so afraid of losing them that I'm losing myself? Emotional dependency is the clearest sign you're loving through past wounds. True love doesn't make you feel insecure when they're away for a few hours or don't reply to a message. If you're constantly pulled into feelings of, I'm not enough, they'll leave, or I need them to feel worthy. Stop. This isn't love. This is your body replaying an old memory. The memory of a child who had to trade parts of themselves to be loved. Question 6. Do they truly understand me, or only the version I'm trying to be? In projection, you don't show up as yourself. You show up as an edited version tailored to their needs. Do they love your strength? You hide your exhaustion. Do they love your independence? You suppress your need to lean on someone, but when true love arrives, you don't need to perform to keep it. You're allowed to be contradictory, vulnerable, messy, and still chosen. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Question 7. If they disappeared tomorrow, would I still be myself? This is the most critical and profound question to practice. If their absence would mean the collapse of your identity, your purpose, your confidence, that's a sign you've poured too much of yourself into them. Love shouldn't be a trade-off for your selfhood. Love shouldn't leave you directionless. If you only stand tall when they're there, you're likely not standing on your own, but leaning on an inflated projection of your emptiness. No one completely avoids projection, but if you're brave enough to engage with these questions, honest enough not to sugarcoat, deep enough not to distract yourself, you'll start to distinguish between the person you're loving and the unwhole parts of you demanding to be seen through love. From that moment, the real lesson begins. It's no longer about chasing the right person, but about returning to become yourself before pursuing love again. Number 5, the lesson. Once you've recognized projection, you need a journey inward, where illusions are gradually peeled away, and the real you emerges no longer controlled by the unconscious. The first step is to face the parts of you that have been rejected. The emotions you deemed too much, the desires you labeled shameful, the limits you denied to be loved. Each time you ask, why am I always drawn to that type of person? Why can't I leave, even though I know I'm being hurt? It's the shadow knocking to be seen. Transformation begins with brutal honesty with yourself. The next step is reintegrating those fragmented parts. When you realize that the vulnerable in you was suppressed by the need to be strong to survive, or the decisive animus was labeled selfish, you will see that you no longer need to find someone to embody those qualities for you. You begin to rebirth those parts from within. And from there, the person you love ceases to be a projection of your lack. They become someone you can see and choose clearly. Jung said, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life, and nowhere do you reflect yourself more clearly than in a relationship." So every time you step into love, don't just ask, "Do they love me?" Ask, "Who am I when I love this person?" If the answer is, "I get to be myself without pretense, without shrinking, without sacrificing my soul to keep them," then it's no longer projection. That's true love. The path from projection to true love is a journey against the current. From the images you blindly attach to others, back to the center of yourself. Love is no longer a search, but a companionship between two souls who have learned not to deny themselves. And then you must accept that no matter how far you go, there will still be times when the other leaves. They may choose a different path, a different level of consciousness, or simply your journeys only intersected for so long. It will hurt deeply, and I understand that. But what matters is that you learn to reframe your perception of that loss. You no longer see someone's departure as proof that you're not enough, unlovable, or flawed. You understand that someone can leave your life, but no one can take the part of you awakened by their presence. Few loves last forever, but the transformation they spark within you can. And if you emerge from a relationship still holding on to yourself even more deeply, more authentically, then you haven't failed or lost, you've grown. Love ultimately is not a destination, but a torch lighting the way. It guides you through psychological territories you might not dare touch, alone, the realms of wounds, desires, and rejected shadows. Every person you've loved, lost, or longed for is not just a relationship, but a doorway. And every time your heart stirs in pain or passion, the universe whispers, "It's time." Look within yourself. So if you've ever been broken, abandoned, or loved wrongly, don't rush to close your heart or believe there's no such thing as true love. See those cracks as the lifelines of your soul, guiding you back to your truest self. And if one day you love again, love not to keep someone by your side, but to see how you reflect in their eyes. If this video resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications today. I also want to leave you with a question to sit with yourself, a question that could transform your relationships if you dare to answer it with your heart. Are you ready to embark on the journey of understanding yourself and awakening the wholeness within?